hard to describe this. As a Chelsea supporter and as a football fan, I am taking this with so much caution because we've seen so many times before managers who have dominated at a smallish club and then have taken that leap to a big club and have flopped. I understand Graham Potter is tactically unbelievable and he has this ability to connect with his players like very few in world football, it seems. But I'm just going to take this with caution. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Two Footed Tackle podcast. I'm your host, Ari Stamatakos. As I check the microphone levels are all good. Testing. Yes, they're all good. I just couldn't hear myself through my headphones for a second, but we're all good. I hope everyone has had an enjoyable week. Turbulent, to say the least. Turbulent to say the least. Shit has happened, and we'll dissect it all. Not all of it, because half of it's not football related. Don't really want to get into that whole kettle of fish. We'll touch on the football side of what's happened this week instead, as we would never not do on this podcast. Episode 8 of the new season. I hope everyone has had an enjoyable week. I appreciate the support on all the recent episodes. It means the world to me. So thank you all very, very much. Hope everyone has had a good week. No football. No Premier League football, no English football. Anyway, we'll touch on that, no doubt. What else is that? Of course, there was a very big managerial sacking, and I was really tempted on doing an emergency podcast, but I thought, no, let's not interrupt it. I feel like emergency podcasts should be set for something big, and I don't think Chelsea sacking their manager is that big, but we'll touch on all of it in depth because it's really the only thing that happened and the only thing that we can talk about over the weekend. Yes, thank you all very much for support on the most recent episodes, on the most recent clips and TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, the whole lot. Twitter, I'm starting to do a lot more, be more active on the Twitters. So all the links to all the socials are in the description of YouTube. Of the YouTube description box. All the links to all the socials for the podcast and for myself as well are there. So give them all a follow, give them all some love. It would mean the world to me. Yeah, it's going to be start doing a lot more just general chit chat on Twitter. So come over, say hi, give me some questions. I'll try and answer them rather than you guys having to wait a week for my thoughts. You can just Are we on Twitter? Active on Twitter, so we can do it that way. TikTok, Instagram, 2 Foot Tackle Podcast, Twitter, 2FTPod. Subscribe on YouTube, like the podcast on YouTube, notification bell on YouTube. All the audio stuff. Let's get some 5-star ratings. Let's get some follows, some subscriptions on the audio platforms as well. Helps the podcast grow, makes my heart really warm, and makes me feel nice. It makes me feel good. It makes me feel like this is starting to pick up some steam, which is good. But let's crack on. Because there wasn't really a lot to talk about because we all know the news and we all know what happened over the weekend. But let's just preface this. I'm not going to mention it. I'm just not going to mention it. We all know what happened. We all know why there was no football, and I'm not going to give my thoughts on it. I'm not going to give my opinions on it because, to be frank, I don't care in a sense. Of course it's sad. Of course it is. But I'm not in a position to give my opinions on this because of my knowledge, my age, and also what this podcast is meant to be doing. So let's just ignore. Well, let's not ignore, but let's just acknowledge and let's not speak about it. So there was no football on the weekend. There was no football, but thank God Chelsea sacked the manager. It's to give us something to speak about. So we're going to speak about that. We're going to speak on Tuchel and Potter. I'm going to speak on Brighton a little bit, what this means for them. We're going to speak on the Sydney United beating Brisbane Roar. I just want to touch on that briefly. And, of course, who went into footed. So not a lot to speak about. This might be a slightly shorter episode than usual. But, yeah, it is what it is, as I yawn, as I'm really tired, as I need to sleep. But let's just crack in, because it's been 4 minutes and all I've done is spoken absolute shit. So it was the news of the week, and it was, of course, Thomas Tuchel being relieved of his duties as Chelsea boss following a 1-0 loss to Dinamo Zagreb in the Champions League. Was that who Chelsea versed? Yes, Dinamo Zagreb. A 1-0 loss to Dinamo Zagreb in the Champions League. The day after, Thomas Tuchel was relieved of his duties as Chelsea boss. Now, where do we start? Now, Chelsea have come out and said, or at least reports have come to light, in which Chelsea had already had this decision made before the Champions League result. So take of that what you will. Take that with a pinch of salt if you want to believe it, or if you don't, that's up to you. I necessarily think that if Thomas Tuchel had just beaten Zagreb, I don't think he would have been sacked. I think it would have been a stern warning in that meeting that was scheduled before that game, or like scheduled before to be taken place after. I think it would have been a stern warning and a stern talking to that, right, you need to get your shit together. But Chelsea's in a really weird spot because they've played 6 games in the Premier League, and are currently sitting in 6th place. So sitting in 6th place, won 3, lost 1, or drawn 1, lost 2. Granted, a goal difference of -1 isn't great, but when you look at some of the losses, you have the 1-0 win over Everton, which was kind of not great, but it's good to just get a result. 2-2 draw against Tottenham, in which Chelsea dominated the game, and Chelsea deserved to win that game. Chelsea were by far the better team, by far had the lion's share of chances, and really, really got robbed in that game. In all honesty, you have the 3-0 loss to Leeds, which came from a Mendy mistake and then a red card, and then a set piece. So Chelsea didn't really get outplayed in that game to an extent. It was a set piece, it was an own goal, not own goal, but it was like a Mendy mistake, which basically led to an open goal, set piece. So one of those results, a 2-1 win over Leicester, in which it was pretty comfortable. I know Leicester did dominate that game, but Chelsea kind of were in control for most of it in terms of they were able to dictate the game. They weren't allowing Leicester to have big chances. 2-1 loss to Southampton's obviously not good enough. And then the 2-1 win over West Ham, which really should have been a draw. Cost West Ham the VAR in that game, which you all know about. But is it a good start to the season for Chelsea? Absolutely not. I don't think you can even argue that. But is it sackable? Probably not. And there's been conflicting reports about why he was sacked. It came to a shock to me. Came out of nowhere. Didn't see any reports about it. Didn't see anything. I just kind of refreshed Twitter on a Wednesday night and just saw it, which immediately immediately made me think, all right, something's been going on behind the scenes. And we've come to light that Bowley and Tuchel didn't really have a big agreement on a couple of key things. One of them was Cristiano Ronaldo. Todd Bowley's insistence on signing him. Tuchel was like, we don't need him. I back Tuchel in that scenario. I don't think signing Ronaldo would have been the best decision Chelsea made. And also the signing of young players as well, obviously with Chukwuemeka and these other young signings that Chelsea have brought in this summer. That was really a Todd Bowley initiative, not really a Thomas Tuchel initiative. Tuchel was very insistent on bringing the youth that the club already had, and Bowley was like, no, let's just pluck the best young players in the world. Not in the world, but like some of the best young players, especially in the country. Players like Chukwuemeka and etc. just are very talented players. So I guess it is that. I guess it is kind of one of those things where you have a massive disagreement. Not even a massive disagreement, because this isn't even like life or death. Like, let's be honest. This isn't life or death. This is just a little bit of a miscommunication, a little bit of a misunderstanding. Tuchel obviously thinks he knows more about football than Todd Bowley, which he does. Todd Bowley is more of your businessman, more of your finances, to give Tuchel the reins. I think that's probably what would work best, especially now with no Petr Cech as being that kind of link person in a sense to the coach and then the board, because he's no longer in charge. It does really create maybe not toxic, but it does create a little bit of a different atmosphere, especially for Tuchel, who came into a system under Roman where he was very communicative. Fuck me. He was very, how do I describe this? It was very open in a sense, both parties were kind of flexible with what each other wanted. To Bowley, who's obviously very stringent on his way in a sense and doesn't really know a lot, with all due respect, about football and about the way football clubs operate in a sense. He's a fantastic businessman, maybe not a good football person, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But yes, Tuchel gone. Now, what does this mean? Or is there any more background I think we have to speak about? Well, it is one of those things where obviously it wasn't based off on-field performances, because while a lot of Chelsea supporters were angry and called for maybe not change, but called for at least called for a little bit of difference in what they want, in what was happening, because it was really bland. It was very similar, and it wasn't really the game plan hadn't improved from last year. It hadn't really changed from last year. Now you'd back a senior coach like Tuchel, you'd back a coach like Tuchel who has taken Chelsea to a Champions League, who guided them to top four under extreme duress last season. It guided them to 2 cup finals in which they lost on penalties in both times. You would back him in thinking, all right, he's probably has the minerals to get the job done in terms of turning things around and in terms of being able to alter what is currently happening and be able to fix it. You'd back him. But I guess Bowley didn't, and I guess Bowley was more impatient, or was more, all right, let's just get this changed. Because let's not remember, Tuchel isn't a Todd Bowley man. He didn't hire him. He didn't. Obviously, we've come to find philosophies don't align, and that's just how the cookie crumbles. I think as a Chelsea supporter, I was angry because this club has gone through enough turmoil over the past 12 months. So we didn't need any more. But I guess the only way is the Chelsea way, and the Chelsea way is this, right? This is the only thing that Chelsea are good for in a sense, and the only thing that they can do. So, yeah, it is one of those things. It is one of those things where you kind of need to accept it, and you need to try and at least understand where Todd Bowley, in this case, is coming from, because I feel like a lot of fans disagree. A lot of fans have disagreed, and a lot of fans have spoken out about this and have spoken out about the treatment that Tuchel got. Remember, his last game wasn't even at home, right? So, and he wasn't even given a proper send off. He took training the morning of him getting sacked. I think quotes have come out and said that he was shocked and devastated by the decision, as you would be, of course. He didn't see it coming. So you kind of have to accept these things. But you can be angry. I've seen a lot of people on Twitter, and let's take Twitter with a pinch of salt, because cesspool at times. But I see a lot of people saying frustrated at Tuchel. No, frustrated at Tuchel for not doing enough to keep his job, which is weird. And also saying people angry at Graham Potter, which we'll touch on a little bit later, of course. But yeah, just bizarre. You can be angry, you can be upset. But I think it's where you have to acknowledge what's happened, and you have to kind of maybe not move on, but you have to at least try and understand what's happened. It sucks. It does, because he's written himself in Chelsea folklore for lifting a European Cup, something that you can never take for granted. Something that Roberto Di Matteo and Didier Drogba are in Chelsea folklore for now, and Kai Havertz is in Chelsea folklore, and by proxy, Thomas Tuchel is in Chelsea folklore because of that triumph, and he will forever be one of Chelsea's best ever managers purely because of that. You can't underestimate the feat of winning the European Cup for a club like Chelsea, who really hasn't been historically massively successful. Obviously, pre-Abramovich, it was kind of your nice solid upper table club. Floating between 7th and 3rd, and winning some FA Cups, some Cup Winners' Cups, League Cups, etc. Floating in and around. Let's not get this twisted, right? Chelsea, yeah, they're not Manchester United in terms of history, but they're also not Manchester City. Let's be honest. Chelsea do have a pretty good history, especially in the late 90s especially in the mid to late 90s, and it was always that brass ring that Chelsea could never really grab, and that's why when Frank Lampard rounds Jaskalainen at the Reebok, when Joe Cole scores a hat trick, or when Chelsea beat United 3-0 at Stamford Bridge, these moments do just live in your head, and are massive moments in the club, especially for fans. And that's similar when Torres rounds Valdez at the Camp Nou, when Drogba gets on the end of a Juan Mata cross to equalise at the Allianz and then score the penalty, when Kai Havertz rounds Edison. These moments put people into folklore for a club, especially like Chelsea. So Tuchel is now by proxy the man who led Chelsea to a European Cup in a thrilling campaign. Like, they beat, let's not forget the who Chelsea had to beat. They had to beat Atletico Madrid in the first round. And that beat Porto, a very handy Porto side, and obviously Real Madrid, who we've come to find the year after winning the Champions League. And then Manchester City in the final, who was probably one of the best Man City sides I've seen in terms of just the way that they played football and the way that they were just so fluent in what they were doing. It's probably the pound for pound the best City side I've seen. Won the league at a canter, and let's be honest, probably should have won the Champions League that year. If it wasn't for some Eduardo Mendy brilliance, and if it wasn't for some Antonio Rudiger brilliance and N'Golo Kante playing a stretch of 3 games, if you're taking both the legs of the semi-final and the final, some of the best football I've ever seen from a player. Like, N'Golo Kante won Chelsea that Champions League title, those semi-finals, those 2 semi-finals, and that final, he was unbelievable. And that goes back to Thomas Tuchel. That goes back to giving him the credit and giving him that title that he deserves as a Chelsea legend, because he got the best out of these players and was able to really drive this standard. We saw the best N'Golo Kante we've ever seen. We saw the best Antonio Rudiger we've ever seen. We saw the best Reece James we've ever seen, and probably I think we'll ever see. In terms of output, I think he'll get better, but in terms of output, he'll just be. I think that's unreal what Reece James was doing under Tuchel. Mount, Havertz, these players were just unbelievable under him, and I think that has to fall back down on his shoulders in a sense, and he really needs to be acknowledged as tactically one of the better Chelsea managers that Chelsea have ever had. But yeah, we'll live in Chelsea folklore forever, and will be a manager that we would have cherished as Chelsea supporters, and even as football people. He was a good character in the league. He provided that enthusiasm. Yeah, the football wasn't great at times. It was kind of very, very systematic, very industrious way of playing football. But yeah, it was a very good tenure for Thomas Tuchel. Got sacked too soon, in my opinion, but it is what it is, and that's the cycle of football. Managers get sacked, managers get brought in, they get sacked, they get brought in, and the man to replace Thomas Tuchel is a man that we've all been calling for, and football hipsters and the like have been calling for, to be given a big job. And it was, of course, Graham Potter. Now, what I think as a Chelsea it's hard to describe this. As a Chelsea supporter and as a football fan, I am taking this with so much caution, because we've seen so many times before managers who have dominated at a smallish club and then have taken that leap to a big club and have flopped. I understand Graham Potter is tactically unbelievable, and he has this ability to connect with his players like very few in world football, it seems. But I'm just going to take this with caution. Because I just don't want to get my hopes up. Because as a Chelsea supporter, Graham Potter was my number one choice to replace Tuchel when he inevitably would have got sacked. Because Tuchel was always going to be sacked in the time period where Graham Potter would be available. That was just going to happen. Unless Man United snapped him up, or unless someone like an Arsenal sacked Arteta, Potter was always going to be available. in the time period in which Tuchel got sacked. Whether that was now, whether that was in 6 months, whether that was in 12 months, Potter was always going to be available. So what that kind of allowed me to do was kind of to process a little bit more, because I'd already had about 6 months where I knew this was going to be the natural progression. He was really the number one favourite. You had the likes of Poch, who, as a Chelsea supporter, I would have hated, but it would have been interesting to see. I don't think it would have worked, but it would have been quite funny to see. My number one choice was Zidane. He was never linked. He was never even considered, so I guess you can't win them all. But yeah, if I could pluck a manager from world football, I'd take Zidane and put him into Chelsea right now. But it was Potter, and what we have with Graham Potter is a very intelligent manager, a very, very overall holistic, intelligent person. He quite clearly lives and breathes football. His tactics that he's able to deploy, or that he has deployed at Brighton, have kind of taken them to new levels. He really has squeezed every last bit of ability out of that side. He's turned the likes of Trossard and Solly March and Pascal Gross into some of the most damaging players in the Premier League. So you have to give him credit for that. And also, and when I was doing a little bit of background research on him, because obviously Chelsea manager, I wanted to know a little bit more about him before I obviously made this podcast and then gave my overall thoughts on him. He is a very relatable person, and he's also a person that is very appreciative from what I found. Now, we've seen his career is very it's very typical of like a journeyman type thing, where he started at the lowest ebb, fourth tier of a Swedish football at Östersunds, got them promoted to the first tier. Remember, he beat Arsenal in the Europa League with that team, moved to Swansea even, and then moved to Brighton, and then has obviously taken this job at Chelsea now. What this shows is it shows the ability for him to progress and for him to change and for him to kind of adapt, which is obviously big for Chelsea, especially at a side that has changing expectations and changing players, changing personnel, changing morale. Everything's constantly changing. Being able to adapt to that is crucial. As well, from a personal point of view, he has a degree in social science, and I'm not quite sure what the actual kind of specifics of that are, but from what I've learned and from what I've researched is that he's does a lot of work understanding emotional awareness within players, and that is something that Chelsea have struggled with big time. We obviously saw under Frank Lampard, he wasn't really able to connect too many players. You saw Rudiger was ostracised, Marcos Alonso was ostracised, a lot of players were ostracised and were becoming a cancer around the dressing room. You've seen it as well under Tuchel. You've seen it at times, and you've seen Tuchel not being able to manage those egos in a sense. Having Graham Potter, who, yes, doesn't really demand respect based off his footballing career, unlike someone like a Zidane, who... that's just touching quickly on Zidane. That's one of the reasons why I wanted Chelsea to get him, was because he's the only manager in world football that demands respect from every single player in the world. Every single player in the world respects him. More than Klopp, more than Guardiola, more than Ancelotti, more than Benitez, more than Nagelsmann, more than anyone. Zidane. That's why I wanted him, and that's why I think he was best suited to manage the egos that Chelsea have. But I digress. With Potter, the emotional awareness. Now, that's something that Chelsea have been plagued with, in a sense, for a long time. And having someone who is very experienced in the field of understanding these egos and understanding the emotions that they could go through, having someone that is trained in that and has a qualification in that is probably more than his tactical ability itself. That's something that I was really looking for. That was something that I kind of knew without knowing, that Graham Potter has a very good soft skills. That's something that I've spoken about quite a bit, and that's something which I'm really passionate about learning and passionate about wanting people to know more of, is the soft skills, because we've seen time and time again like managers have been tactically very good. That's great. But their soft skills haven't been great, which means they can't connect to players. Whereas you have someone like, I'm not going to say Jurgen Klopp is tactically inept, not by any means, but he's probably the best man manager in world football. His soft skills are almost perfect. And you can see that. These Liverpool players want to run through a brick wall for him because he's just able to connect to these players a lot more. And that's why I think the rationale, and this goes back to just sport in general. Right now, the gap and the difference between football and sport in particular from now to 10 years ago to even 20 years ago is as big as the gap has ever been in its life. Because society is changing at a rapid rate. People are starting to react to things and have emotions in such a drastic way to have what they were 20 years ago. They have managers and coaches in sport, not just in football, in sport, 20 years ago. And people are like, why can't they just do it his way? Why can't they just do it his way? And it's like, that doesn't work. Even 10 years ago, it does not work. That's why we're seeing players like, or people like Jose Mourinho falling a little bit out of favour at the top clubs. We saw in that Spurs documentary, he was very hard on these Spurs players. And while that's good, while tough love's great, we saw it didn't work out. I know they obviously had a lot of injury issues, etc., but we saw that old school way of managing doesn't work anymore. Does not work anymore because society is becoming a lot more, I don't want to say sensitive, because I feel like that's quite harsh and that's quite a little bit of a pansy way of saying it in a sense, but they are becoming a lot more reactive to things. And the way you're spoken to by your boss, the way that you're acted, or the way that you're treated by your boss has more of an impact now than ever. So having someone like Graham Potter, who is very in touch with that and understands that well, and he's able to kind of identify these issues in a sense with players and how they react and how they are able to, and what brings the best out of them, that's the ideal manager for Chelsea at the moment. Potter, I think, were able to, like I said, he squeezed every little bit out of that Brighton side. This Brighton side isn't world beaters, and we're going to see a significant drop off now since he's gone. I can tell you that for free. Significant drop off. Not because he's kind of unearthing this talent that none of the players knew that they had. Not because he's the best tactical manager in the world. I do think his tactics are very good, and I do think he's potentially the top 6 managers in the league in terms of a tactical perspective. But what he does is that he squeezes every last bit of ability out of these players and gets them to work at 110% when they can only go 100. Because he understands them, he relates to them, he's in touch with them, in a sense. Mentally, emotionally, he understands these players, and these players obviously react well to them. And it's different. Because you're going to have someone like a Mason Mount, I can tell you this for free, Mason Mount reacts to criticism differently to how someone like a Edouard Mendy reacts to it, or how someone like a Thiago Silva reacts to it. I'm just assuming here, I could be wrong, but I feel like with Thiago Silva, you can be a little bit harsh. You can be like, mate, this is not fucking good enough. Do this, and this. You need to do it quickly or else you're going to get dropped. Someone like a Mount, someone like a Pulisic, someone like a Reece James might need the arm around the shoulder. Might need hey mate, this is what you need to work on. This is how you can get better. You're going to need to improve on this quickly because we understand the talent that you have. You just need to improve on it. Having those individualized soft skills separates the good managers from the best managers. And that's what I think Graham Potter has. And that's why I think he's ready to take his career to the next level. And this is what I think this job can be. However, I say that he can take his career to the next level. And while I do think that, I also think this could have the opposite effect. I also think that this is going to be very kind of extreme. It's either going to work or it's not. You're not going to see Chelsea plateau. You're not going to see that. You're either going to see them go far and do really well or capitulate. The reason why I say capitulate goes down to that respect thing. when David Moyes walks into that Man United dressing room, granted it was an aging squad, and granted there was a lot more nuanced things that didn't allow him to succeed, but he had Wayne Rooney, he had Robert Van Persie, he had he has these Premier League winners, like serial winners, looking at this bloke that is just this Scottish guy that's just come from Everton, thinking, why the fuck should I play for you? Like, who are you? What are you doing? Who are you? Right? And that obviously had a negative effect on the squad. Hence the performance, hence what we now know. With Potter, that's a little bit of a similar dynamic. However, with also, in saying that, I think Potter has the soft skills and has the personality and the personable skills to overcome that, in a sense. So I'm not too worried about that to an extent. However, when you bring in a long-term project, you need to allow it to be given the long-term. You need to allow it to be given the time that it needs. One of the reasons why I was so frustrated with the sacking of Frank Lampard was because you signed Frank Lampard in and you give him 18 months. What's the point? What's the point when you're giving a coach that has coached two years? Two clubs over 3.5 years. 3.5 years, maybe 4 years. Why are you sacking him after 18 months? What's the point? How does that work? You're giving this a long-term project only 18 months. You need to give this 2, 3, 4, 5 years even. Similar now. If I come back here, hopefully not in this room and hopefully not with this same setup, but if I speak to you again in 18 months' time and Graham Potter's been sacked, I'm going to be fucking angry because I'm going to be sitting here saying either one or two things have happened. Either he wasn't ready, which could be a thing, which could be possible, or Todd Bowley hasn't had the patience to back him. I hope it's neither, because I hope I'm not sitting here in 18 months' time talking about him being sacked. I'm hoping that I sit here in 18 months' time talking about him lifting up Chelsea's second Champions League in a row. But what kind of this shows is a project that Chelsea are going to be building towards, and with that, it's a project that you need to allow it to be given time. You need to allocate it time, a lot of time, for it to work. Another reason why that's a thing is because you've just spent 300 million on Thomas Tuchel. Graham Potter might walk in and say, all right, I don't want you, you're not good enough, you don't fit my style of play, you're not good enough. All of a sudden you need to flush out 6-7 players, bring in 6 or 7 replacements. That might take two transfer windows. All of a sudden you've not wasted 2 years, but you've allowed the 2-year period to kind of refresh the squad, and then you need to give it another maybe 2 years for him to fully kind of instill his philosophy into those new players. That's 4 years you need to be given at least. You've given Thomas Tuchel 18 months. Boom. Fucking mind-boggling. Like, the fuck? How? Why? What are you doing? Yeah. So, I'm treading with caution. On a base level, I really like this signing, this acquisition for Chelsea. I really do. However, I'm going to tread with caution. I'm not going to get my hopes up. I'm going to think in the worst case scenario, because that means I save myself the pain if it doesn't work out, if I just think that he's going to be shit. So I'll be like, yeah, I expected it. But no, on a real, I think this will work. I think it should work. It should work. I don't know. I think it should, but I'm just going to be treading with caution. But yeah, that's the 2 cents on Chelsea's whole sitch. Now, let's go. Obviously, Graham Potter wasn't unemployed to begin with. He obviously came from Brighton. Now, with Brighton, obviously Adam Lallana is going to be the new player coach, which is interesting. We saw that with Ben Mee last season. And it didn't work. They got sacked. So he's now appointed as player coach alongside under 21s coach Andrew Crofts. Is that correct? Yes, Andrew Crofts and Shannon Ruth. They're the three people in charge of the squad. So I don't know how this is going to work. I don't know what this is going to be, but expect a significant drop off for Brighton. Graham Potter just had that side clicking, and it's going to be very hard to replicate it. It's got nothing to do with Brighton's players. I think they're great players in terms of, like, I think Trossard's taken his game to a new level. We obviously know the quality that McAllister and Caicedo and Pascal Gross and these type of guys have. We all know the quality that they possess. So it's not a knock on them by any means. It's just kind of highlighting how good Graham Potter is. So yeah, expect a drop off. It's a shame. It's a real shame. Hopefully Brighton can act like they have in the past and just kind of secure a pretty good manager that can see them going forward. Yeah, they're a smart club, so you'd expect them to do. You'd expect them to employ a pretty good manager and a pretty solid manager. They won't make any rash decisions, and they'll take everything how it needs to be taken. But also, yeah, so that's the Brighton thing. Now, something I wanted to speak on was the Ange Postecoglou links. Hello. I obviously tweeted tongue, maybe not firmly in cheek, but maybe tongue halfway across into the cheek, saying, get Ange Postecoglou on the phone right the fuck now, thank you, or please and thank you, in regards to Thomas Tuchel sacking. I don't think Ange Postecoglou at Chelsea would have worked. I would have been living in La La Land, and this podcast would have been 40 minutes of me singing Ange Postecoglou songs. And just having a photo of him. There would be no video to this part. It would just be a photo of him and me just singing Ange Postecoglou songs for 45 minutes. I don't think it would have worked. I think it is too early, and I think he does need to I think he needs to fully commit to the Celtic job and really take a couple of years to set himself into it and really create maybe not dynasty, but to create a real culture there that's built around him. I don't think he should go to Brighton. I think his opportunity will come. I don't think it's this one. I think this is kind of a little bit of a sideways move, going from Celtic to Brighton. So I just think he needs to wait for his opportunity, and he'll come. He'll coach a top 6 club someday. I think it could be next year, it could be the year after. He will. I have no doubts in my mind that he will. Yeah, so he just needs to wait. I don't think he should take the Brighton job. I would love it. I would adore it. And Brighton would become my second team, and I would maybe not, but you know what I mean. I would love Brighton 10 times more than what I actually do. Like I said I was like, if Ange Postecoglou becomes Spurs boss, fuck, I'm going to be very torn. I'm going to wake up like one side of my body's going to want to kill the other side of my body. Yeah, the morning of Chelsea Spurs. But yeah, I don't think he should take the Brighton job. I think he's doing good things at Celtic right now. He just needs to kind of allow himself to rest in that role and breathe and sit down, relax in that role, and then he can move on, because he's still young, he's still got time, and the opportunities will come, no doubt. It's not something that he needs to rush. So yeah, big Ange. Fuck, that would have been good though, wouldn't it? That would have been insane. I wouldn't have shut up about it for fucking 4 years if he becomes Chelsea boss. But yeah, let's finish up with the last talking point, which I just want to speak about ever so briefly. It is, of course, what it was. Sydney United beating Brisbane Roar. Done. One draw, one side of the semi-finals, done. Oakley, do your business against MacArthur. Do your business. And then we're going to be in for a fucking treat. So Oakley Cannons versus MacArthur, Wednesday night. Jack Edwards Reserve, fucking get down if you're listening. I might be there. I'm very tempted to go. Fuck, I really want Oakley to get it done. Having 2 NPL clubs in the final would be insane. It would be insane scenes. It would be insane vibes. I'm not sure where he'd be. I think I said this last week. It'd probably be at Amy Park. I would think it would be at Amy Park. But yeah, fuck. How good was that? What a goal! I think it was to put Sydney United ahead. Just fucking like Glenn Shapiro. Fucking what a goal! Like, go seek it out. It's on the Australia Cup Twitter. I mean, when people say there's no quality of football in this country, go and watch that fucking goal and tell me that there's no quality in this country. Like, piss off, mate. That was insane. Yeah, let's just ignore everything that happened not on the pitch, especially with their fans. Let's ignore that. Not good. They can piss off. But yeah, great team, great vibes, great scenes. Love it. Let's move on and let's finish up with you and into footed. Now, we all know what this segment is. If you haven't seen this podcast before, basically we just go through who's done something daft, who's done something dumb, good. No, not good. The opposite of good, bad. Who's just fucked up over the week in football, and this can range from club to player to staff member to organisation to, as a fly is running around my room, not flying around my room. It can range from anything, anyone involving anyone in the world of football. And I've actually gone with this week. You know who it is. It's the Premier League. Now, every other, the Premier League and the Scottish League, every other sport in the world continued in the wake of the passing of the Queen, not of Queen, like the band, Queen, not of them, but of the Queen, her Royal Highness, Majesty. Fuck, I don't know, man. See, this is why I didn't want to speak about it. I don't know. Yeah, so the passing of the Queen obviously meant that no one really knew what was going to happen. Every other sport continued. Cricket continued. Footy continued. Rugby continued. But the Scottish League and the Premier League thought, fuck off, we're not doing it. We're not doing this. Just an utterly boneheaded decision. Like I just don't get it. You're punishing people. You're punishing the working class. You've cost so many people lots of money. You've cost a lot of people who are affected by what has happened. You've cost them the only escape that they've really had, because switch on the fucking TV and all it is about the Queen, right? So you've given them, you've taken away that 2 hours, that 2.5 hours of escape for them. It's fucking bizarre. The fact that you're stripping that from people who probably don't care about what's happened or do care and need some sort of escape. It's a fucking ridiculous decision. It's utterly ridiculous. You can mourn and you can celebrate and you can commemorate whilst playing football. Black armbands, minutes of silence, minutes of applause. Yeah, some fans, some groups of supporters might not have responded to that accurately. They might not have responded to it how the Premier League wanted them to respond to it. But freedom of speech exists. We're not living in North Korea. Like, yeah, you can have an opinion. Like, the fact that you're silencing, the fact that was one of the main reasons why the games were called off was because of the fact that they were fearful that some fans might boo the minute silence or the minute's applause. Mate, it's fucking freedom of speech. Let's not pretend that. How do I word this? Let's not pretend the Queen was a perfect human being, and let's not pretend that her reign was the utopian reign that you could the most utopian reign that you could possibly have. People are going to be angry about everything. People are always going to have an opinion about something. People are always going to be angry about something. So you can silence that, but by doing so, you're just going to make them more angry. I don't get it. The game should have gone ahead. Fucking ridiculous decision. But I digress. Let's finish up. Let's move on. And let's fucking go through some preview of the week. Also, you're congesting the fixture to more than what it already is. It's going to be, I think it's going to be Saturday, Wednesday for the whole year up until the World Cup. You're going to kill these players, man. You're going to kill them. Saturday, Wednesday for 2 months. It's not sustainable. Like, let's just look at what let's just take Chelsea. Or let's just take United, right? They play, Australia time, Friday, Sunday, Monday, Friday, Sunday, the following Monday. Oh no, there's an international break. Then they play Monday, Friday, Monday, Friday, Monday, Thursday, Sunday, Friday, Monday, Friday, Sunday, Tuesday, Sunday, Tuesday. Sunday. They play 1, 2, 3, 4 games in 2 weeks. That in November. That's not sustainable. You're gonna kill these players, man. You can't keep postponing games. You can't do it. You're gonna kill these players. Anyway, let's just move on to the preview of the week. Because fuck me dead, man. Fuck me dead. Is there Champions League? There is Bayern versus Barca. That's going to be a good game. Like I said, Australia Cup semi-final. We'll get down to that if you're in Melbourne. City versus Dortmund. That's going to be a good game. And Chelsea-Liverpool. So that's going to be on Monday night. So, of course, I'll touch on that. I'll touch on that when it comes. Obviously, next week. My brother, a Liverpool supporter. I'm a Chelsea supporter. My household's going to be great. That's going to be a fantastic watch. I can guarantee it. But yes, thank you all very much for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast on YouTube. Make sure you leave a like, leave your thoughts in the comments below. Follow the Twitter, TFTPod. Get around it, get amongst it, get the interactions going. 2 Foot Attacker Podcast on Instagram and TikTok. The TikTok's starting to get a little bit of steam, which is great. That app's a kind of a bubble, but it's a pretty fun bubble, that app. And then, of course, all audio platforms, Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcast. Give it all the 5-star reviews, the likes, the subscribes, all of that good stuff. It means the world to me. But yes, thank you all very much for watching. Make sure you stick around and come back this time next week where hopefully we'll have some football to talk about. See you guys next time. Goodbye.